Good morning, Dan and Amy. We'll get back to Comey at the bottom of the hour with James Kallstrom, former assistant director of the FBI. But let's do a little bit of discussion of economics here with our guest, Steve Moore, who's coming up in just a moment, senior economist for CNN, Wall Street Journal columnist. You know Steve Moore. This is a story that has particular import and application for Illinois. It's about Puerto Rico, and we haven't talked about it nearly enough.
You mean my people?
Yeah, that's right.
I got 2 Boricuas at home,
I understand.
and there a lot of family members live there.
Well, it's a financial catastrophe, is that
Yes, it
U.S.
is.
territory. And Steve Malenga has an excellent piece in City Journal, which is a product of the Manhattan Institute. See if this rings familiar at all. The Puerto Rican version of municipal bankruptcy is the latest chapter in a 20-year struggle that began when an odd coalition of budget hawks, statehood advocates, and critics of corporate giveaways convinced Congress to phase out tax benefits that businesses could garner by locating operations in Puerto Rico. Since then, efforts to make Puerto Rico's economy more independent and sustainable have come to little, in part because the reforms were incomplete 20 years ago, leaving in place tax advantages that encouraged the territory to borrow its way to fiscal oblivion while requiring local employers to adhere to burdensome labor market regulations. The result is a floundering economy and a mountain of debt, and now bondholders are being asked to take a big haircut, and they're none too happy about that.
This sounds and smells a lot like the state of Illinois. Is Mike Madigan's cousin down there as a politician?
Yeah, right. Detroit, Stockton, Puerto Rico, Illinois. Just to give you a sense of this, Detroit, which of course
Filed for bankruptcy.
famously did, and is starting to come out of that, sort of, kind of. Puerto Rico owes about 7 times more in bonded debt than did Detroit, and its government pension funds are in much worse shape. Puerto Rico's recovery plan envisions paying $800 million a year on its debt when it would need 4 times that much to satisfy its unfunded obligations, which, again, rings very similar to Illinois. And here's one of the reasons why. This is a story we did in ChicagoCityWire.com, ChicagoCityWire.com, which is my publication, one of the ones I publish. The percentage
Side hustle.
The percentage of City of Chicago employees who earn more than $100,000 a year. What do you think the percentage is?
Of people that earn less than?
More than $100,000 a year, 32,000 plus city employees. What percentage earn more than $100,000 a year? When you include salaries plus benefits and taxpayer-funded pension contributions. So the burden salary, which is the appropriate thing to look at if you want to do, apples to apples compares to the private sector.
90%.
You would think 90%.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you're just trying to be hyperbolic. So the actual number is 70%. 70% of Chicago city workers have a burden salary of greater than $100,000. And you want to compare that to other big suburban municipalities around the state? Arlington Heights, the percentage is 30.
Okay.
Springfield, state capital, the percentage is 28. And I'm not saying that these suburban percentages are legitimate. I'm definitely not saying that, but I'm just giving you an order of magnitude. Joliet, 150,000 people, 25%. Schaumburg, upper middle income suburb, 75,000 people, 23%. Your hometown, Mount Prospect, 21%. Rockford, 150,000 people, 7%. Rockford's struggling.
Yeah, they sure are.
Naperville, 150,000 people, upper middle income suburb, 20%. 70%. And despite all of the money that's been taxed and spent and borrowed and spent, you can't keep up a la Puerto Rico. And so where are police and fire pension funds? Where are laborers and municipal worker pension funds in the city of Chicago? They are all less than 30% funded. That is what actuaries call death spiral. 70% of city employees, $100,000 earners. For more on this topic and others, we're pleased to be joined by the aforesaid Steve Moore, chief economist, senior economist for CNN. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, guys. I was going to say good morning, but I just listened to that soliloquy. It doesn't seem like it is a very good morning. By the way, those benefits don't include one of the most valuable fringe benefits that city workers get, which is they virtually have tenure, right? They can't
job
be fired.
Security. Yeah, you're right.
How many people in the private sector? I can get fired. Amy, you can get fired. Dan, you can get fired, but you can't fire a city worker.
And by the way, the median household income in Chicago in 2015, $63,000. So then you have the additional morality question of $63,000 a year earners being forced to finance $100,000 plus compensation packages for 70% of 32,000 city workers. I mean, it's just impossible.
Love to talk about fairness. Fairness.
Right.
Where's the fairness in that? That the guy who's in the private sector who has the same job as the guy in the city sector, working for the city government, is that worker who's funded by the taxes of, let's say, the private janitor, and the public sector janitor gets twice as much. So there is no fairness, and that it is bankrupting the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois. Puerto Rico is a good example. By the way, you left out the other area that's in really, really big trouble. The two states in the country that are in the most financial trouble are Illinois and Connecticut.
Yeah.
And both of those states have massive tax increases on the rich. They were going to solve all their problems, right? All we have to do is tax the 1% and all the problems will go away. Everybody's leaving Connecticut and everyone's leaving Illinois. And now they've got massive budget holes. And what do they want to do? Tax the rich again.
That's exactly right.
Tax the middle class. But when is it going to end? I mean, someday, do you think the teachers, firefighters, or pensions are just not going to come?
Here's the interesting thing about this. I wrote a lot about the Puerto Rico crisis back when they did the bailout bill in Congress. And one of the big problems is this idea that these municipal bonds are risk-free. And we've got to instill in the notion of investors that when you buy a Chicago City bond, or when you buy a Puerto Rico bond, or a state of Connecticut bond, that is not a risk-free investment. I think one of the problems is investors think that somebody's going to bail them out. And what happened in Puerto Rico should be by the way, those investors bought those bonds should take a haircut.
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of idiot buys a Puerto Rican bond when they can't pay their bills? There has to be some discipline in the market, and the bondholders have to stop pretending that somebody, and by the way, when I say somebody, you know who Chicago hopes is going to bail them out, California hopes is going to bail them out, Connecticut. They all think Uncle Sam is going to come full with a big check. And I'm here to tell you, it ain't coming.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, you're right about that, if it gets really bad, if these pension funds capsize, then somebody will come in and bail us out, and that somebody, as you said, the federal government. But think about that just logically. There's a lot of other states, like, I don't know, the nearly 3 dozen that are conservative reform, Republican controlled, whose members of Congress are not going to be real excited about sending their state's tax dollars to bail out pension funds in Illinois.
I guarantee you, I mean, as you guys know, every week I talk to you, today I'm in Tennessee. I guarantee you, the people in Nashville, Tennessee have no interest in bailing out Chicago. I promise you.
I'm persuaded. So speaking of tax policy, where do we stand in the House with essentially the tax reform plan that one Steve Moore and one Larry Kudlow and one Steve Forbes have concocted?
Well, let's get on with it. I mean, I think it's taking too long. I still think, Republicans have to act with more urgency here. We got a really good jobs report on Friday. I think the economy, remember, I was pretty nervous about the economy over the last few weeks because it seemed like it had hit the pause button. But the economy is doing a lot better right now. I think we're going to get a really strong second quarter, but we need the tax cut to keep this going. And it's factored into a lot of the stock prices already. That this is going to get done. So get going on this. Cut the corporate tax. We have the highest business tax rates in the world. Do the repatriation. A great article. I don't know, Dan and Amy, you saw it in the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Apple, one of our great, top 10 companies in our country. Apple has $260 billion, not million, $1 billion abroad in places like Mexico, Ireland, Germany, China. They want to bring that money back. Here's the deal. We charge them 10% to bring that money back to the United States. They can reinvest it here, create jobs here, or pay it out in dividends to American shareholders so it gets circulated in the economy. We get $46 billion out of that, if my math is right, 10% of $260 billion.
Yeah. We
get all these jobs. So we got to do the repatriation because that's just one company. Apple, one company has $260 billion. We estimate $2.5 trillion could come back to the United States if we do the repatriation, low rate, 10% tax. It's a win-win for everybody. But we got to get this done, guys. We got to get done before the end of the year.
Well, speaking of jobs, I mean, job openings have hit a near record high, 5.7 million openings in March. So there's a big demand, I guess, out there for electricians and plumbers, but are there skilled workers to fill these positions?
Well, first of all, you're exactly right, Amy. I mean, this is the thing that so frustrates me to no end. I mean, we spend billions and billions and billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars on higher education, and kids are graduating from college this May without any useful skill. So you're right. There are so many jobs out there. If you know how to be a carpenter, if you know how to be a mechanic, if you have any engineering skills, if you know how to deal with any kind of industrial equipment, you can get a job that pays $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year in a heartbeat. But these kids are graduating with sociology degrees and ethnic study degrees and all this stuff, and nobody wants them. And then they feel like entitled to they're the ones who feel entitled to a $75,000 a year job. They don't know how to do anything.
Steve, that's
indictment of our education system.
Yeah, Steve, that's not true. The city of Chicago wants them, and they'll pay them $100,000.
You want $100,000.
Absolutely, Steve Moore. Wall Street Journal columnist, senior economist for CNN, former Trump advisor, and all-around
good guy,
great
really.
guy, supply side, free marketeer.
In Illinois, please pay your bill so I don't have to pay them.
Yes, exactly. All right. Thanks for joining us, Steve. Appreciate it.
Hi, guys. Every week.
He joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.